Hi, I'm Cassie, and I'm going to walk you through question 42 of the AAMC's official physics question pack. So here in this question, we're given an equation for the intensity of sound, and clearly we're going to have to plug into this equation. But when you're reviewing any question that you missed for the MCAT, any of these plug and chug questions where you just plugged into the equation, never miss the opportunity to make sure you're also reviewing the concepts related to that equation, because there's going to be a lot more questions with the MCAT that are conceptual based rather than just plugging into an equation. So we want to make sure that you can not only do the math in this equation, but you understand the concept of what is intensity, specifically what is the intensity of sound. So let's start broad. What is intensity in general for the different quantities we can measure? Like we can measure the intensity of light, the intensity of radiation, the intensity of electromagnetic field, and then of course what we're doing in this question, measuring the intensity of sound. So intensity, which we represent with a capital I, is just going to be power per unit of area. So how much power is applied or distributed over a certain amount of area. And what are going to be our units for power and area? Well, we know power should be measured in watts and area should be measured in meters squared. So we have watts per meter squared. Now, whenever you review an equation where there's a variable in it like power that you also have an equation for, I like to take the chance to also review that equation and go as far into doing that as possible, because you need as much repetition with these equations as possible for the MCAT. So again, you can do a shallow review of these questions. You can just plug and chug into this equation, or you can take the opportunity and really review all the concepts in the question, which is going to be the best bet for setting you up to get that goal score on the MCAT. So in other words, I said I want to review what power is too. Okay, so I said power is going to be work done over time. And we know that work, its units are going to be expressed in joules, which is equal to a Newton meter, don't forget that. And that time is going to be expressed in seconds. Okay, but we're not done yet, right? Because we also have an equation for work, okay, right? So now we're going to take this one step farther and review what is the equation for work. The equation for work is force applied over some sort of distance or displacement, so F times D. And then if there is an angle between the force and the displacement, then we're going to add the cosine theta onto this equation. Although I'd say more often than not for the MCAT, you're just working with the equation work equals force times displacement. And what are going to be our units here? Well, we know that force is measured in newtons. We know that distance is measured in meters. So we've got Newton meters, which makes sense because we said a joule, which is our units for work, is equal to a Newton meter. And then finally, we'll go one level further and we'll say, wait, what is our equation for force? One of the most important equations to know for the MCAT. Well, we know force is mass times acceleration, where our mass is measured in kilograms. And of course, our acceleration is measured in meters per second. And force, we know that our units for force are newtons, right? We set that up here. So we know that a newton is equal to a kilogram meters per second. All right, so make sure all these equations are in your equation deck. Now let's go back to the concept at hand, which is that of intensity. So when we're talking about the intensity of sound, we use the equation that's given in the question stem. The decibels of the sound represents its intensity, so the intensity of sound is equal to 10 times log base 10 of I divided by IO. Now here, what is I? Well, I is the intensity of the sound being measured. And IO is just going to be a reference intensity. It's usually going to be that threshold of hearing. So why do we measure the intensity of sound in decibels? Well, we know that decibels are expressed on a log scale using a base of 10. So that means when you calculate log base 10 of something, you're essentially asking yourself how many times you must multiply 10 by itself to achieve the number inside of the logarithm. So inside those parentheses of the logarithm. So for example, let's say the intensity of our sound being measured, so this part here of our equation, is going to be 100 times greater than the human threshold of hearing. So this would just be log base 10 of 100. Okay, so we can simplify that. We'll take out the 1 on the bottom. And we'll just say is equal to x. So how do we solve that? Well, we just need to ask ourselves how many times you must multiply 10 by itself to achieve the number inside parentheses. So that's easy, right? If we just square 10, we multiply 10 by itself twice, then we get 100. So we know that our x here is going to be equal to 2. So again, anytime you have log base 10 of something like this, log base 10 of 100, I would just set it equal to x. And then you're going to do the base here raised to the x power. So 10 to the x equals the thing inside of parentheses. So equals 100. And then we just have to ask ourselves, what does that x need to be for us to get that 100? And here we know x would need to be 2 in this example. So that's just a quick review of logs, because I know for a lot of you, you haven't seen them since high school really. And why is it important that we use a log scale for the intensity of sound? Well, That's because humans can hear a really wide variety of intensity of sounds, right? We can hear someone whispering, and we can also hear a jet engine like going by super loud. So that's a huge range of numbers. So to make things easier, we express things on a log scale where our numbers are sort of compressed and nice and small and easy to work with. Okay, so now that we've reviewed what intensity is and specifically what sound intensity is, let's go ahead and plug into the equation with the numbers we're given in this question stem. So we want to know what the intensity of the threshold of pain is. Kind of interesting, huh? And they tell us that it's 120 decibels. So where are we going to plug that 120 into this equation? Well, we're going to plug it into the decibels part, right? The part that's already in decibels. So we're going to say 120 decibels is equal to 10 times log of the intensity of our sound being measured divided by the intensity of our threshold of hearing. So what are we going to do next to solve this? Well, we're going to get rid of our 10 here, right? We're just going to divide by 10 to get rid of it. And then, of course, we'll get 12 equals log of I divided by IO. Now what? Well, remember that there's a 10 implied here, that this is the log base 10. So we can do just like we did in the example before. We can take that 10 and we can raise it to the thing on the other side of the equal sign. So we'll raise it to the 12th power. And when we do that, our log goes away. So we just get 10 to the 12th equals I divided by IO, our ratio here. Okay, now what? So our goal, again, is to solve for I. So let's go ahead and get I on its own. So we're going to get I equals 10 to the 12th times IO. Okay, and then we can go ahead and plug in for IO. So 10 to the 12th times, we're told that the threshold of human hearing is 10 to the negative 12th watts per meter squared. Notice those units again. We've got power per unit of area, right? Watts per meter squared. And then all we have to do whenever we multiply two things together that have exponents, we just add our exponents. So we have 10 raised to the power of 12 plus negative 12, which is just to the 0th power. And our units, of course, are watts per meter squared. And that, for me, corresponds to answer choice B, 10 to the 0 power watts per meter squared. So whereas in this question, the equation was given to you for the intensity of sound, this is something that I would just have memorized. I have seen MCAT problems before where you did have to know this formula. So just make sure to add this formula to your formula bank if it's not already, and to make sure to know what everything represents. I hope this helps. If this helps, please give this video a like and follow my channel for more content like this.